Hi, I'm Sean Lewis from Journeys Worldwide. Today we're going to be talking to Gary Strand from Wildlife Explorer. Wildlife Explorer in Tanzania has two camps, one in the Serengeti and one in Tarangire National Park. These are exclusive camps where, when you book, you will be the only people in that camp. The Serengeti is well known for the migration and Tarangire for its fantastic herds of elephant. Okay, Gary, thanks very much for coming. Sorry that you had to get up so early, but great to see you again. And I believe you've just been back to Tanzania.
Absolutely, great. First of all, Sean, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity of coming in and getting up at this ungodly hour. It's like being on safari again. So,
Had
business
to
as
keep you
usual.
going.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody else is still in bed, so it's all good. But no, great to see you again. And yeah, I've just spent a couple of weeks back at base in Tanzania, just outside of Arusha. I did it primarily to touch base with the team. We've got a team of 50 odd people working with us over there. But the other reason was really to experience for myself what international travel felt like during this COVID time. And in the UK, currently, although that's going to change in a minute, currently there are no restrictions on us traveling. around the world, as long as we quarantine when we come back into the country. So for me, I thought it was a good exercise. I took a COVID test just to see what the turnaround time was in the UK, because of course many African countries have got stipulations that you have to have a COVID test, negative test within 72 hours of flying. So I thought it was important to try and try the system and see how that worked. It was very efficient. It was excuse me, it was back within just over 30 hours, which obviously well within the time that I needed it for. Obviously, it was negative, so I was good to travel. So that just meant packing face masks. We use the KLM services out of Bristol, which is our regional airport, 2 hours away, and then a short flight into Amsterdam. I wanted to overnight at Schiphol so that I could get some sleep because I'm getting old now. And then on to Kilimanjaro in the morning. I have to say that, it felt safe. Of course, these questions are never conclusive. But there are checks going into Bristol, temperature checks, which 37.7, I think, is the highest that temperature you can be reading. Everybody was masked up, behaving themselves, both in the terminal, unless you were, having a food service, and on the airplane as well. It all felt very, very comfortable. And of course, the main benefit of travel at the moment is that there's nobody else doing it. So you've got, you have all this empty space in these terminals and in these airplanes that makes it an absolute pleasure to be airborne again. So I was very happy with with the experience that I was given. I was very happy landing in Africa, into Kilimanjaro International, and the health service checks that were compulsory there. You have to fill out a health form that asks you specific questions about how you're feeling, where you're going to be staying, what your itinerary is, and then a temperature check, and you're on your way. Lots of sanitization stations. Yeah, lots of sanitization stations, to be able to continuously, wash your hands. And I actually antibacterial wipes down surfaces on airplanes, just, for my own peace of mind. I didn't want to go through this whole, procedure of trying to see what international travel was like and then not tick all the boxes. So I felt that it was a very comfortable experience.
Okay, and landing in Africa, obviously you made it there and you made it back, and you're still going, so it's all okay.
I'm still going. I've actually, I put my, I've waited a week, and I've now put in a COVID test again, so that I can tick that box, so that I've done the whole experience like a guest would have to do, traveling ex UK, and traveling ex around the world from any other countries. So that will be back tomorrow. So but I haven't got any symptoms. As far as landing in Africa is concerned, as I said, you've got those couple of checks on the within the terminal itself. You've got the same international regulations and stipulations that you have to abide by, masked at all times unless you're eating or drinking. But as well as I, that once you actually get into Africa, you then become part of a much more outdoors type experience. So,
and there's certainly no problem with social distancing in your camps, and on Araia as well.
Absolutely. And the Tanzanian government has been quite proactive in forcefully requiring all of us outfitters to abide by a COVID protocol, standard operating procedures, which are very explicit in what our requirements are to, to welcome guests back into Tanzania. And they follow the guidelines of sanitization of people's luggage on arrival, temperature checks of people on arrival. All of our staff are masked whenever doing face-to-face contact with guests. And what our model is, it's exclusivity. So none of our properties, whether it's the lodge itself or the camps, share with another group. So it's very, it's a good model to already have in place. It's what we believed in for the last 35 years or whatever. That exclusivity is the last real luxury, and COVID sort of reinforces that to a degree. So when you do arrive as your small nucleus bubble, if you like, whether it's 2 people, whether it's 16 people, you have that facility all to yourself. And
I think the biggest danger with Wildlife Explorer is Mercy's cooking and the boys in the camp.
Yeah, I know. I've actually deliberately kept the screen, up a little bit so that I don't have to deal with that. It was so funny actually. I got in country and I arrived. We always arrive about 10 p.m. And there's my place setting is set on the island in the main area there, and a note saying "Don't forget to eat, Gary." And it was luckily of the 2 weeks that I was in country, I was out in the bush for a week of that, so I was able to escape the charms of Mercy's culinary delights. But it was damn nice when I came back out of the bush, let me tell you.
Always is.
Yeah.
And so how was the game? How was the wildlife when you were out there?
Yeah, I think of course something like this doesn't have any effect on the wildlife populations, other than perhaps giving them a bit more of a breathing space to go about their business. You have this symphony of life and death that happens every day out in the wilderness, and that continues to thrive. What I did was I was headed out to the bush. Firstly, being a little bit selfish, but just to want to have some bush time. Secondly, we were doing. I was doing inspections for our travel partners that we also use. But the experience of actually being out in the bush is like it's like going to Africa 30 years ago. For anybody that has had that experience, where
Awesome.
where you're entering into this realm where very few other people are actually experiencing that at the time. I mean, when I didn't go down onto the crater floor because I've had that all to myself, 30 years ago. So when I asked the guys on the gate, what the visitor numbers were on that particular day, they said they had 6 vehicles the floor.
Jeez,
and I checked with with the gate clerk as I went around to my accommodation for the evening, and each of those vehicles had 2 or 3 people in. So you can just imagine on the caldera floor, what that experience is actually like with that few people. I mean, it's an absolute opportunity for people that can travel at the moment. I think there's a window of the next 6 months, and certainly until the spring, if not the beginning of UK summer, American summer, for people to, if they are brave enough, in the light of all the media, that we have to listen to on a daily basis, if they are brave enough to get on an airplane and arrive in Africa, they will be presented with the opportunity of a lifetime. And, certainly for our private groups that are on the books for coming that's the way they're viewing it. There is some trepidation, and we all have to be flexible with, with recognizing the governments, will all of a sudden have a change of COVID policy that restricts travel. So as an industry, we've had to adopt, much more flexible, lenient, um, postponement possibilities for people that are nervous about traveling. But for those people that are able to be in country, across the African continent, really, I think there's travel opportunities that are second to none, that we have not seen, in decades.
I would love
And
to
it's
be,
an
if we could
exciting,
get out of Australia, I think I would be up there in a
yeah.
flash. But
Sean,
um,
I actually I did think about you, as I was, because I knew we were headed to doing this interview, and I just thought, oh my god, because I went up to the copy area
uh,
at the Alamana, where you of course have walked many times with guests, and and even there the cultural element has changed slightly. So it's just a phenomenal time to be there, and for people that are willing to travel, it's the right time to do so.
so with Alamana, is the migration come down yet, or is it not quite
It
there?
hasn't, we haven't. It seems as though it's a little bit late with actually reaching. By this time, I would expect some of the forward herds to be at least down in the Western Corridor or coming down on the eastern side of the Serengeti. There are still massive river crossings going on
Okay,
up in the Mara region. So I think
the
for
food is still
whatever
good up
reason,
there, so
these things
they
run.
stick it out.
Yeah, absolutely, and what we are seeing in country are these opportunistic people who have recognized that, look, I'm, rightly or wrongly, I'm not going to be controlled by the virus. They have the possibility to travel, and so there were people from Holland that I bumped into. There are a couple of Canadians and a couple of Americans. I didn't see any Brits, and obviously didn't see any Aussies. Sorry, but it was those small sort of people. But people were traveling. I was interested. The KLM flight, which was a Dreamliner, was about half full. So that's a very positive indication for the industry that with without further travel restrictions, that there
Are
will
still
be an
prepared to
element
get out there, and they're wanting
of
to travel.
exactly. But as far as the migration is concerned, still very firmly up in the north. We've seen a few herds that have small nucleuses, and when you say small, 10 to 20,000 gathering, that have decided, one leader that says, let's go, and they've headed south. So I think probably within the next couple of weeks we'll see some good movement,
Because I
from
think
the
that's something that
Mara.
a lot of people don't realize. They think the migration is just the crossing of the rivers, and that the migration is actually on the go the whole time. And now coming up into the year is when the short rains happen in the southern parts, and the migration is coming down. And this is also when they're giving birth. And certainly my favorite time of the year. And I think you're quite partial to it as well, aren't you, Gary?
Absolutely. I mean, these days where my time is split between really running the company and being able to still maintain my guiding. The green season, we don't call it the rainy season because it's got a negative connotation.
Yeah.
But the green season, which, as you've just pointed out, is when the short rains start happening, and you've got these amazingly nutritious volcanic grasses that are just, they go dormant in the during the dry season, and then as soon as there's the slightest moisture on them, they just start flourishing. And of course, it's those grasses that the migratory herds, both wildebeest and zebra to a degree, the Thompson's gazelles and the Grant's gazelles. They're the ones that really want to flood onto the shortgrass plains of the Serengeti ecosystem, and build up their fat deposits for when you, as you so rightly say, when they give birth, which starts in January and goes through until the end of February, really, and with quite a hiatus in the middle there of lots and lots of calves dropping. So what you tend to see is, at the moment when I was out there, there had been some periodic burns from the Parks Department that had just got rid of dangerous areas of plum grass. But then what you've seen is that those areas are starting to green up, and then the Lake Victoria Basin, that's responsible for a lot of the weather that happens in the region. It starts becoming wetter and wetter, and you get these localized tropical storms coming through, and it's quite fun. You'll be driving across the Serengeti, and all of a sudden you'll just come across this very defined green line, where
just had a bit of
one side
local shower.
Exactly,
Okay.
and the grasses have responded overnight. And you've got this delineation which you go, wow, what happened here? Because we're all so used to these being in the middle of a storm, but when you're actually on the edge of a storm in an ecosystem that responds so so well, it's an interesting phenomena. So on the over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we'll see more and more of those there's rainstorms coming in from the west, and the grasses will start responding, and that's what will bring the migratory herds down. And as you rightly say, it's not just about the Mara crossings, which happen during the height of the dry season. It's about these colonnades of thousands and thousands and thousands of migratory animals heading down to these lush green grasslands, to basically prepare for giving birth. Fabulous time to be on the Serengeti.
Because also the predator action. I know a lot of people don't like to think it, but the predator action then is just out of this world as well. A lot of it is just picking up the afterbirth but there is also obviously the calves, the odd calves that get taken, and the odd adults. But it's just phenomenal to see all the predators out there when all this is happening, and just so active.
Yeah, and I think of course nobody enjoys seeing the demise of another animal's life, but this is a symphony of life and death that gets played out on the shortgrass plains. Throughout the ecosystems, not just the plains, on a daily basis, and in order to support one predator, one particular animal, another one has to be sacrificed, and so there's no malice. I guess that's the appropriate term. There's no malice with this. It's just merely a survival strategy that everybody adopts their own survival strategy to maintain their condition. And the wildebeests are to migrate down onto the shortgrass plains, and the predators who have been resident over and maintain territories over the dry season, who have become very lean and mean. They're just waiting for the opportunity of feeding, and that goes across the board. You've got crocodiles on the Graveti River down on the western side of the Serengeti. You've got all the raptors, the birds of prey that, as you mentioned, afterbirth and opportunities like that. And then, of course, you've got the bigger predators, the cheetah, the hyena, the lions, the leopards, the smaller stuff as well, that are all relying on this this influx of
food, basically,
of food source. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I read once that predation actually only accounts for something like 3% of the mortality on on the shortgrass plains. I'm sure somebody will actually call in and say, actually, Gary, that's not true at all. So
I
but
do
it's
think.
but it's a percentage that I like to talk about. So
Sure.
please be kind to me.
Excellent. Did you make it down to Tarangire this time?
I did. I did. That was what I did was, because I wanted to touch base with the guides and try and give them some sort of hope that normality would come back in the not too
Sure.
distant future. So I took that opportunity for all of us to go down and share. We were just down there for 48 hours, but we were down in a Sunyai Lamakau camp, which you helped establish, and it's stunningly beautiful over there.
Mhm.
I still remember when we got up very early in the morning to go and see what the site was like, and got
Yes.
absolutely hammered by tsetse flies, but were rewarded by a glorious sunrise. And
It
we
was quite
decided
phenomenal.
that,
We had that beautiful elephant herd in the mist. It was quite a bit of mist that morning, if I remember right. It was beautiful.
amazing.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I nickname it the elephant camp because
Yeah.
we just get so much elephant interaction. And we've the parks have been proactive in helping us with the tsetse fly, so we don't really have a big problem with that. But the benefit of being down
And
there,
just away from everybody else and the
again,
regular humdrum. Yes.
yeah, you know how antisocial I am. I don't like crowds, and so this camp for me is almost. I struggle actually to decide whether it's the Tarangire camp or whether it's the Serengeti camp that sort of tweaks my
They've each got
buttons
their own
and
specific
things.
qualities, and they're both
They
very
do,
special.
they
Both very
do.
special.
And I was sat on the veranda of my tent. Guys, of course, Gary, have a cup of coffee. Brought me a cup of coffee first thing in the morning, and literally sort of a couple of 100 meters down on the edge of Lamakau, we've got a small breeding group of elephants. We had a big herd of buffalo that came in, and there were wildebeest and zebra around, which normally I don't get to see because I'm typically guiding in the green season when they've left the Tarangire ecosystem for the Simanjiro Plains. So it was phenomenal. We heard lions off in the distance. We didn't see lions. We did see a very beautiful leopard on the way into camp. So again, it's just a reinforcement that the opportunities are there. Actually, and we did drive in. Normally, I would fly in, but we drove in and just drove the length of the park. And in 4.5 hours that it took us to get from the Northern Gate down to Lamakau, we didn't see one other car.
Yeah, that's so special for you, but very sad for the income for the parks, and it's an operating.
I know, and it's that's an interesting. An interesting point, really. And I had discussions with the rangers that I came across, just to find out, how they were actually surviving. And the government has been, has not, curbed wages and
fantastic.
stuff. These the people who protect the parks are still, being paid properly, which you would you have to celebrate the Tanzanian government for for recognizing that their wildlife areas are of utmost importance and keeping the infrastructure in place despite the level of tourism dropping to unprecedented levels. So I think in Tanzania we have not seen the threat of poaching that has possibly happened in some of the other African countries. Although I think it's still a similar story that for whatever reason, the poachers have not been able to come in and take a hold The wildlife has continued to thrive. Which if we can come out of this with that as being a success story, then that's pretty good, don't you think?
I think that's fantastic. Yeah, quite surprising and very, very good. Now, with the Maasai on the edge of Tarangire, how are they doing? Did you manage to get to see any of them? Because I know that's one of the
Uh,
things that you do is you often, and I did it as well, is going through those Maasai communities and going to an authentic village, not one of the ones that set up for tourists. And
Absolutely.
always a great experience, a really mind-blowing and eye-opening experience for the tourists. But how are they? They must be struggling a bit.
Yeah, the thing is with the Maasai, and as you know, um, we have Maasai as part of the team that work with us, that also do cultural activities, actually based in the Osunyai camp with all pools and traditional walks and things. There, it's a cattle driven economy, so whilst
Yeah.
the tourism element may have, well, has dried up for the cultural boomers around the Ngorongoro Crater rim, and they're obviously missing that money coming into the economy. But they are fundamentally an intact culture that relies on cattle for their economic
So
wealth,
they're not too
and
badly affected as a
they're not
as a
too
tribal
badly
culture. Yeah.
affected at all. And I'm sure for the community conservation projects that have been in place and that we take part in. There is a longing for tourism to recover, but the simple fact is that the economy for the Maasai is their capital, and we've had phenomenal rains this last year, across Tanzania and across Kenya, which has meant that the cattle population has at least maintained, if not thrived, in some
Okay.
areas. Which when you're talking about marginal areas, also has sometimes a negative impact. But as far as COVID is concerned, um, it has had very little impact, whatsoever. And again, the Maasai, I talk about their culture being very strong. They, the very fact that it is strong means that when COVID was at its height, perhaps, and coming, dipping its sort of toes into East Africa, being an isolated community already, is a benefit.
It
Social
didn't really
distancing,
spread and it didn't really work. Yeah.
not at all,
Yeah.
not at all. And so, even talking with some of the elders that we have dealings with, they didn't see, um, they didn't see the impact that
Okay.
we've experienced in the West. And a lot of that's to do with they very quickly adopted these really cool Juakali contraptions for
I
using your
can
feet
imagine.
to wash hands with and things. It was fantastic actually how that went through these relatively isolated communities, but they sort of adopted these things. One person was in charge of making sure the container was full of water. There was always a Dettol soap there, and so they adopted that really quickly, and and I think that had a massive positive effect
Impact. Yeah.
on. Yeah,
And I think your model has always been so good. It's pro COVID anyway. With your camps are exclusive, and you got such beautiful camps there, all very luxuriously decked out. But a group can only book out your entire camp. So when you come in, the only other contact you're having are with the staff, who are very isolated anyway. So when things come around, you've got the
exactly.
perfect model
Yeah.
already in place. It's great.
Absolutely, and what we've our policy going forward is that crews will They will go in 2 weeks ahead of the first guests, so that we know, we've any incubation has has been ticked off, so that we know the crew is completely COVID negative. Again, that face-to-face interaction with guests will be masked. Up to the guests what they do, of course, whatever they're comfortable with. All the guides are required, because they're backwards and forwards, to provide a COVID negative test result before they're allowed to go and meet guests.
Poor guys, they can't be too comfortable.
I
Continuous
know.
testing.
Well, I know. Well, I don't know. The thing is, they in the UK they send you these these little home test kits, and I need 3 arms. I mean, my tongue doesn't do what it's supposed to do. I sort of have to hold that down, sort of get the swab. I got to see what I'm doing. I mean, it's very complicated. Joe, my wife has managed to do it all by herself, which just goes to prove that women can multitask and men can't. But I had to elicit good help yesterday when I was doing mine.
Awesome.
Yeah. So but again, what the Tanzanians are, remarkably, pragmatic about moving forward. They recognize that there is a need to show that they're serious about the COVID possibilities, and they will do anything and everything they can to ensure that these protocols are in place and adhered to, until such time as hopefully we've got rid of this nastiness. Yeah, but in the meantime, Africa just rolls on, and you got to remember that Africa is very used to stuff like this. It's not a daily occurrence, but it's certainly something that in the history of the continent, it's had to bear the brunt of quite a few nasties.
People got a lot of perseverance, and they can stand up to it.
A lot of resolution, Sean, as you well know. So.
Yeah. Gary, thanks very much. I think we're out of time, but thanks very much, and thanks for getting up early again. And we'll get you up early again.
Listen, Sean, thank you very much. And I just wish everybody well, you and the family. And anybody that does get to listen to this, I apologize. 2 old guys rambling on about their love of Africa and the future for travel, because this will pass. We have to learn to live with it, and we also need a quality of life. So I appreciate being able to come on, and thanks very much.
Hopefully we'll be all back at it again soon. We've been talking to Gary Strand from Wildlife Explorer in Tanzania. I really enjoyed catching up with Gary and hearing all about the Serengeti and the Ngorongoro and Tarangire. We hope you've enjoyed it too. We look forward to seeing you next time.